was a little kid, about the age of 7, my family moved into an apartment building in Whittier. This apartment building was sort of long and skinny. It had 3 units in the front, A, B, C, and then ours in the back was a 3-bedroom, so it was D. And it sat on a long lot. And a few months after moving into this apartment, both me, my brother, and my sister all started seeing these little figures that were about maybe 3 feet high. They looked like a paper cutout, like you couldn't see a face, you could just see a shape, and they were either all black or all white. And we saw these creatures, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, multiple times over the 10 years that we lived in this apartment building. And what you would see is you'd see this figure out of the corner of your eye, and you'd turn to look at it, and it would just bolt and just be out of there very, very quickly. And this went on for probably 5 or 6 years. And what's odd is that my parents never saw these figures, only us kids. So I was around 7, my sister was 2 years older, so she was about 9. And it happened pretty regularly to the point where I told my brother one time, and he was like, "You see him too?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So me, my brother and sister started comparing notes, and we all described them in the same exact way. No facial features, like one-dimensional, about yay high, and they were either all black or all white. I'm the only one of the 3 kids where I actually saw it, where one time it didn't bolt. About 3 years of us living in this apartment, I was in my bed, and in the middle of the night, I just woke up out of a dead sleep, and my bedroom door was open so I could see the hallway. And we had a light on in the bathroom, so that part of the hallway was illuminated pretty well. And when I stared at the hallway, I could see this little figure. It was all black. And this time, instead of bolting, I could tell by the way he was looking at, he was standing in sort of like a Superman pose, and he was, facing me, and he didn't run. And I was just like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? And I'm like, normally they run. And so I waited a few seconds to see what he was gonna do, and he didn't move, he just stood there. And so I decided I was gonna chase this thing. So I threw off the covers, I bolted after him, and he immediately started running. And I chased him down the hallway, into the living room, and in the living room, my mom was asleep on the couch. And as I got close to him, I was like maybe 6 or 7 feet away from him, he jumped up in the air and went right behind the couch. And because I was running so fast, I ended up hitting the couch, and I woke my mom up, and she was kind of screaming like, "What's going on?" And I'm looking behind the couch, and I'm throwing the drapery away, and there's just nothing there. And it was, and I almost remember seeing, not only did he jump up in the air in the living room, but as he got closer to the back of the couch, he physically got smaller, so that by the time he went behind the couch, it was a little more than a ball. And he was black, totally black. So my mom wakes up and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Mom, I'm chasing that thing that we've been telling you about." And so she looks behind the couch and she's like, "There's nothing there." She's like, "You need to go back to bed." So she puts me back in bed, and the next day I wake up and I tell my brother and sister that story. And they're like, "He didn't run away, he didn't just disappear?" I said, "No, I chased him down the hallway into the living room where he jumped up into the air and went behind the couch." And so that never happened to my brother and sister. I was the only one that happened to. And after that incident, I would still see them from time to time. They never stood like that, and I never got to chase it again. But this thing of us 3 kids seeing this little ghost, whatever it was, this went on for like 5 or 6 years. And at some point, all 3 of us happened to notice, like, hey, as we get older, we're not seeing these things. And my parents said that they never saw it. It was only us kids. And so as I was approaching high school, age, that's when all 3 of us just stopped seeing it. Maybe that's why my parents don't see it, is because they're, up there in age. Whereas when we were younger, and plus the figure looked to be about my age, 7 or 8. But we never knew whether it was a boy or a girl because it had this weird paper cutout, sort of shape, and it was like one-dimensional. So we weren't scared, but we just thought that's really unusual, And so had such an impact on me, I remember telling my best friend growing up, Tom Garcia, that story. And we were friends with him and his sister. So we told him and his sister this story This was 50 years ago, because I'm 59 now. And he remembered that story too. And because he kept, when he would come over to my house, he would say, am I gonna see this thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I said, typically it happens at night, so I doubt it, but it's possible. But he never saw it like us 3 kids did. So about 2 months ago, my best friend, Tom Garcia, who I told that story to when I was a kid, he asked me if I wanted to go on a road trip to go see another friend of ours who lives up north of Yosemite, and I said, okay. So we were driving up in the high desert. He said to me, I have an article that I forwarded to you, and I really think you should read it. And I said, what is it? And he goes, I really don't want to say. He goes, you have to read it. And so when we checked into the hotel and I got access to my Wi-Fi, I see this link that he has sent me to the Whittier Daily News website. And it was an article that was published in 2007 originally, and then republished again in 2017. And I start reading this article, and the title of the article said, Whittier Death House. And I was like, Death House? So I start reading this article, and come to find out, there was a man in the early 1920s who lived in a house where my apartment was. He had like a big house and a garage in the back. This is like early 1900s. And he was living with his common-law wife and her 3 kids, age 1, 2, and 8. And apparently he wanted to join the military, and his wife didn't want him to, and so they got into a huge argument, and he ended up murdering her and her 3 kids. And shortly after, because he didn't want to get caught, I guess, he fled and moved to Texas, where, according to this article, he married a woman and murdered 8 of her kids. And so while he was on death row in Texas, he happens to mention to, I think it was a detective or something, oh, this isn't the first time I've killed. I killed years ago when I lived in Whittier. And so they asked him, well, can you prove it? And he goes, sure, I'll tell you where the bodies are buried. And so apparently, when he was still in Whittier, he went into the garage, dug up the floor of the garage, and put all 4 bodies facing north, and all 4 of them had nooses around their neck. And so unbeknownst to us, you know, because the apartment building we lived in was built in the 60s, and where we think the garage would have been our back apartment, apartment D. And when the article listed the address, 7242 Whittier Avenue, I couldn't believe it. I think I was probably shaking at the time. And I looked at my friend Tommy, and he was like, uh-huh. He goes, kind of explains things, doesn't it? And I'm like, holy cow, unbelievable. So yeah, I sent that article to my brother and my sister. This happened 50 years ago, because I'm 59. And when we moved in, I was 7. And between 7 and like age 12 is when we were seeing these things. And so of course they were freaked out too. They're like, what? And I'm like, you just never know. And so even though it happened even though the sightings happened 50 years ago, these murders happened almost 100 years ago. And so when I finished that article, all I could think about was, after we moved out of that apartment building, how many other young kids our age might have possibly seen these little figures. And so we don't know if that was like the spirit of the 8-year-old, you know, just kind of wandering around, or what. But yeah, it was the weirdest thing that's ever happened.